Hello everyone, welcome to Ray Talks Agri Vision here from the leaders. As you see on the screen today, I've got 4 awesome leaders with me. Today's discussion is going to be post-COVID-19 digitization in agriculture. Friends, today's episode is dedicated to the soldiers who lost their lives fighting for us. Before we start, let's pray for the souls of our brave soldiers in that most difficult terrain. They've been fighting with our, I don't know what to call them, and they lost their lives for our sake. So let's pray for their peace of, let their souls rest in peace. Let their families get a lot of support and strength. The whole country stands with them. This episode, I repeat, is dedicated to the soldiers who lost their lives, who laid down their lives for us on 15th of June in Ladakh. God, give the strength to the families. Friends, thanks once again for joining in large numbers for this yet another series on Ray Talks. Now, though I am humbled to launch this, I was humbled to launch this series, but at some point of time, I think I should express, I am proud to say this has become the world sensation in its series called Ray Talks, especially in agriculture. We have had 10 episodes. Today is the 10th episode in about 55 days to be precise. We launched on 25th April. And now we have made a series on every Saturday at 4 o'clock. We'll have awesome leaders like you speaking to us. Today's topic, digitization in agriculture. Just imagine in this pandemic situation, if technology and digitization would have not come to handy, what would be the fate? It would have been so difficult. More so with agriculture. So, but today's discussion, we will focus how we are going to, or how farmer is getting supported with digitization, especially small and marginal farmers. So friends, as you see on my screen, awesome leaders, we have representation from a bank, from finance support, a startup, and India's largest agri-input company, Rallies, serving entire value chain from channel to the farmers. So what we'll try and achieve in today's discussion is we'll try and understand the various ways a farmer can be served. We'll try and discuss the entire value chain from the points of financing, that is one part, their ways of dissemination, challenges faced, and how they are overcome in these times. And then from agri-inputs point, Mr. Nagarajan is here. He will try and, rather I will try and find out from him how digitization is leveraged or used for that agri-inputs services. As I mentioned, we have a highly regarded and most respected panelists today with me who represent cross functions. And they are also the leaders who are making a difference in their own field of agriculture through digitization, like the youngest being Arjun with us today. And Arjun is very happy because he just raised some good amount of funds a couple of days back. Congratulations, Arjun, on that.
Thank you. Thanks a ton.
Now, quickly, let me introduce my panelists. I have Mr. S. Nagarajan, the Chief Operating Officer of Rallis India Limited. Mr. Nagarajan oversees both seeds as well as crop care businesses of Rallis. Prior to becoming Chief Operating Officer of Rallis, Mr. Nagarajan was the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Metahelix Life Sciences, the seeds business subsidiary now merged with Rallis parent company. Mr. Nagarajan has over 29 years of experience working in many Tata companies, a Tata veteran, an officer of Tata Administrative Services, TAS. He has experience in strategizing and executing setup, scale up, and turnaround of operations. Mr. Nagarajan has begun his career with Tata Motors, continued to serve in Tata Cellular, Tata Teleservices, and Tata Elxsi. He is the founder director of FSII, that is Federation of Seed Industry of India, and he is also on the board of Crop Care Federation as a director, and he is President Commissioner of Rallis India's Indonesian's seed business subsidiary, that is PT Metahelix Life Sciences. Mr. Nagarajan is an alumna of IIT Madras and MBA with a gold medal from IIM Ahmedabad. Welcome, Mr. Nagarajan, to this discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome. We have Arindom Datta. He is the Executive Director and Head of Rural and Development Banking Advisory at Rabo India Securities. You know, something very nice, when I say nice, Arindom is so passionate about ag-tech developments and its significance for smallholder farmers. He has been with Rabobank for 14 years. Otherwise, he's got 28 years of rich experience working earlier with NABARD, IDBI, and CARE. Arindom has been honored with the India Sustainable Leadership Award in 2017. He has done his mathematics honors from St. Stephen's College and again an MBA from IIM. He is an independent director of NAPKISAN. He is the observer on the board of AgroStar. He is advisory member of Climate Smart Agri 100 of the World Business Council. He is a member of the FICCI Task Force on AgTech. He is a member of the National Advisory Committee on the Produce Fund for FPO set up by the NABARD. Welcome, Arindom. Always pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks for your kind words.
Now we have Nitin Chaudhary. He is the founding member and head of strategy at Samunati Financial Intermediation and Services Management. He manages entire strategic initiatives and product design related to the scaling of the business. He is an alumni of Institute of Financial Management and Research. With over 14 years of experience in development of finance, especially focused on low income households, Nitin has worked with companies like Visa, Micro Pension Foundation, and IFMR Trust, which is currently called Vara Trust. Nitin, welcome to this discussion.
Thanks, Raj. Glad to be here.
Same. And now we have dynamic Arjun Ahluwalia. He is the founder and CEO of Jai Kisan. Arjun brings with him significant experience in the venture capital and private equity sector from the US, Middle East, and Asian markets. Arjun earlier worked with the Silicon Valley Bank's VC arm and Abraj Group. He founded Jai Kisan to build the first rural fintech full stack platform to cater to the financial needs of the customers in rural emerging markets. Arjun is doing something very disruptive to the agriculture. Arjun is a graduate of Texas A&M University, the USA. Arjun, you're welcome to this discussion.
Thanks a ton, Raj. Looking forward to being here. Thank you, everyone.
Friends, this Ray Talk series is an idea and initiative of Ray Consulting. We operate from Hyderabad in India. We expertise and serve clients in the entire agri value chain. We serve clients in India, Southeast Asia, and Middle East. I've been in the agri industry for about 3 decades. My first job with Rallies, for about 18 years, I served with Rallies. Got huge good memories with them. And with this, I would like to start the discussions with the panelists. We have about 7 to 8 minutes in the initial round to each one of you. And we would love to take some questions from the audience. Audience, please keep your questions ready. And once we finish the first initial round with the panelists, we'll take your questions. You please raise your hands, whoever has got a question. And otherwise, you can put in Q&A or chat box for us to take it forward. So friends, let me start with the banker, Arindom.
Thanks, Raj.
Yes.
May I start?
Yes, Arindom, see, you've been a passionate ag-tech guy and you are a banker. And you've been leading the investment heavily and facilitating agri industry across the globe, especially focused in Indian operations too. You have facilitated offerings, inputs, delivery systems, financing tools, and awesome technologies. My question to you is, how do you feel the post-COVID-19 will be anywhere different from the past of your 28 years of experience in your approach for this segment related to the digital technology applications? Yes, Arindam.
Thank you, Raj. A pleasure to be here. And I think, Raj, you answered a part of the question in your initial speech. Now, what has happened during COVID when there was huge disruption? The supply chains and the value chains we thought were efficient got completely disrupted, and they turned out to be fragile in the face of this disruption. And that's one big learning of COVID, is that we need to build in more resilience. That's a absolutely key lesson which has come out to the way we work, to the way our supply chains are organized. And one of the key enablers for us to get back on our feet is technology. I'll come and I'll explain that a little more. Now, technology has been imbibed by a lot of industry, even in the agriculture industry, but it was at its own pace. Because firstly, technology of the kind that we have today, it's new. Second, it has not been tested at scale in the Indian markets. That's why there were corporates, there were financial institutions, there were tech companies, but the adoption of technology was slow, I would say. And my guess is that COVID is going to give it a big boost to lead to more resilience in agriculture operations. By resilience, what I mean is whether it's in the small farmer domain or it's across the supply chain, that they would have multiple channels to work with, which should be done very, very efficiently. Now, let's see what's the biggest issue that we are grappling with in the Indian agriculture economy is the sheer size and the fragmentation. So that leads to a lot of information asymmetry. There's so much of information asymmetry that whether you are a real market player, you want to procure the goods from the farmers or from the farm gate, or you are an input player, you want to provide very specific, very, very high value inputs and advisory to the farmers, whether you are a financial institution and you want to provide finance to the farmers or other financial banking services or other financial services, you just don't have enough information to be able to make good decisions. And if you wish to make good decisions, you need to invest in an army of people who needs to be out there gathering information, and it's mostly static information. And that brings us to the two big costs. One is the transaction cost, and second is the risk cost, especially from a banking perspective, but it's also true for a supply chain player. That the transaction cost of interacting with millions of farmers, it's extremely high. Second is the risk of doing business. You don't know your counterparties too well. You don't know at the field level what kind of crop is getting sown, what kind of inputs are being used, what kind of crop is getting produced, and what's the stage of the different crop cycles. But now technology makes it possible to give this all together, along with blockchain technology, which leads to integrity in operations, trust in such initiatives. So now we have potentially a solution to be able to attack the issue of information asymmetry. That's extremely important, and to make business with the smallholder farmers much more efficient, and to make the supply and value chains more inclusive. That's absolutely critical. So the hypothesis is that with the onset of new age technology, which Arjun from Jai Kisan will talk of more, whether it's in pure play agtech companies who are providing multiple services at time 360 degrees services to the farmers, or it's the ag fintech companies. Jai Kisan is one of the leading ones in India. They are now trying to address the issue of access to finance using technology. Or we have the real sector players, the large procurement agencies, the large processors, and the large input players who are all imbibing technology to be able to do that. So we come to the issue of digitization of farmers. So once we digitize farm land, the farmers and the produce, and we are able to give them a digital footprint, that's when you have seriously useful decisions to be able, serious useful information to be able to make business decisions, irrespective of who you are as a counterparty to the smallholder farmers. So that is what makes it very exciting. And I would again say that post-COVID, technology is going to get a big boost because it's going to be the biggest enabler to be able to be a risk mitigant for any kind of future disruption. This is not the only disruption we are going to have. There are going to be many more in the future. It could be the issue of climate change. Again, coming to climate change and water, these issues are so complex. And it's the farmers, when the crisis hits us, it's the farmers who are going to bear the biggest brunt. Are there solutions out there? Yes, there are solutions, but they are extremely cumbersome. They are extremely expensive, and just too much of information needs to be gathered at the farmer's field to know how the farmer is going to tackle these issues. Again, that's where technology comes in to make it all meaningful for the farmers and the supply chain players, to make it more target and efficient to be addressed the issues of water and climate change. So I'll just conclude with 2 points. Yes, COVID is a big boost for technology. And second is, it's not about us getting over COVID in the agriculture chains and getting it back on shape, but also for future crises, we have learned enough to know how to imbibe technology to be able to address other risks which will be facing the agriculture sector in the future. I will stop here for the time being, Raj.
Arindam, while we're talking about small farmers in India, now looking at the entity Rabobank represents across the globe, what's your cross learning from one country to the other country? Is there anything that India has got to offer to the world? Like today's amongst my panelists, both of them operate out of India. So is there anything companies like them can take it outside India, or is there a technology you feel that India can bring it from rest of the world?
Well, let's put it this way. Indian situation is unique. And if there are technology players who can crack the Indian code, and a lot of them are doing it, then I think there are three factors which makes Indian technology extremely attractive for the for the world, especially for Southeast Asia and Africa, which have similar difficult situations, and they don't have the kind of institutions that we have at the ground level in India. So they require technology a lot more. So a couple of things. First is India is strong on technology per se, right? That's one. Second is the kind of human resources that technology has attracted in the agriculture sector in the last 3 to 4 years. It's been amazing. You look at the founders of the leading 60, 70 technology companies. I mean, people like Arjun. I mean, these are the best of human resources who have left other jobs or who have left Silicon Valley here to get into India. So the quality of human resources that we have working with technology is immense. And third is the cost effectiveness and cost efficiency of Indian technology provider. Now, my sense is that the per unit cost, whether it's per acre, per farmer cost of Indian technology is the cheapest in the world.
Yes.
So from a cost efficiency and from an effectiveness perspective, I think Indian technology has got a huge potential to go global. It's already happening in a small way, but I do see a big move for them to move to other parts, and they will also ride on the supply chains of global companies. Once the global food and agri companies which are operating in India and they test the technology, whether it's on traceability, quality, whether it's on precision farming, whether it's on any other aspect, once they test the success of these technologies in India, they will take these technologies to other parts of the world too.
See, I think from my side, I'll extend a minute for you to think. If you remember, when we had our digital Ag India conference in Hyderabad on 4th February, one of the questions which the entire panelists, various panelists discussing was, in spite of low-cost technology in India, still farmer perceives it as a cost. And there was one question that came to all of us, that who bears this cost? Because farmers are reluctant to bear the cost. So how do you inbuilt in this? So today, for example, we have rallies, we have Samunati. Is there a way where we can inbuilt this cost so that farmer doesn't feel the pinch? Can we bundle it up?
Absolutely. And just to give a couple of examples, you're absolutely right there. Smallholder farmers in general are not willing to pay for technology. It's because they do not know whether it's going to be efficient for them, whether it's going to lead to better business and better realization for their produce, right? So right now, the play that's happening is at the supply chain level, that most of the supply chain players are paying for the services. Now, having said that, with the huge FPO movement, I'm sure Nitin from Samunati is going to speak about that. Now, that provides a very credible platform to be able to digitize farmers and their operations. And a lot is going on there. A lot more needs to be done. Now, with the FPO movement, digitization is getting easier. And you have the supply chain players who are willing to pay for those services. It's still nascent because the technology now is extremely new. But there are also now digital players who are working with large FPOs, and they need to be honest brokers who are trusted by both the farmer organizations, the farmers, and the digital players. We are playing a big role, and the multi-labs and other credible organizations like Samunati is also playing that critical role to be able to get them together. Now, we just paid the upfront cost for a big experiment that Cropin is doing with mango and cashew farmers in 2 different states in India. Already the results are extremely positive. So what we said is we will bear the upfront cost, but the maintenance cost needs to be borne by the farmer organizations once they see that there is a positive impact on their income. So that's happening. And you will hear of innovation from Jai Kisan also as to how they are managing their cost and their revenue model, which is extremely interesting.
Thanks, Arindom. I think we have a lot of things answered by you. Now, I'll move to Mr. Nagarajan. Mr. Nagarajan, can you unmute? Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Nagarajan, you represent not just a company called Rallies, but so much values attached to it. as a technology provider, not just a product or service provider, you have taken, I'm sure, a lot of steps, initiatives, practicing the digitization in every aspect, whether it is internal manufacturing management, team management, channel management, and the last mile connectivity, the farm management through the farmers. So can you take us through what are the initiatives Rallies is making to ensure that digitization is used in an optimum way to leverage your partners?
Yeah, sure, sure, Raj. I think that's absolutely true. In the context of Arjun and Nitin who are here, maybe I can characterize Rallis, we being, as you put it, a real sector player, perhaps not as an ag, but as a tech ag player. I think the difference that one would possibly think is that if agriculture is the playfield for some of the technology players, such as the other companies, for us, technology is the enabler for being an agricultural player. So I think we are perhaps looking to see that whether we could be a tech ag player in number of areas that we are working on. To your question about how are we trying to sort of in the post-COVID situation visualize how this technology can be utilized by a player like us, a real sector player like us, I do have a few slides which I will be happy to share. If okay, I can just share that and perhaps talk through that.
Oh, that is good. We'll see a lot of things what's happening in Rallis then.
Can you confirm, Raj, if you're able to?
Yes. We can see that. Yeah, can you go to the presentation mode?
Yeah, is that better?
Yes.
So I'll try and keep it brief, but I just want to say that if it was characterized about supply chains getting much more resilient, I think we are the supply chain, right? As an ag input player, we provide agricultural inputs to the farmers, whether it is crop protection, crop nutrition, or seeds products. So within our organization or the field of play that we have, if you look at the different components of it, whether it is at the distributor level, or at the retailer level, or even at the farmer level, there are a lot of activities. There's a lot of thrust for digitization, as Arindom put it, that has certainly been witnessed during this COVID period, which is likely to sustain post-COVID as well. Well, of course, employee engagement on the supply chain for ourselves, right? Our raw material sourcing and our supply chain, also there is a lot of digitization that's happening. And I also want to highlight that even in our R&D work, there is a fair amount of digitization that we have witnessed. So maybe I'll just take a minute to just share with you some of the things that are happening. For example, at the distributor and retailer level. What we have seen is that with the lockdown and the difficulty of being able to move about, distributor meetings have all moved online, whether it is through a platform like what you are using today or Google Hangouts or some other equivalent platform. Even meetings with the retailers at the various territories are happening between our sales team and the retailers. One-on-one meetings, of course, are also happening with different partners. And what is also emerging is that many of our dealers are also proving very adept in participating in farmer meetings and even R&D trainings that we undertake for the farmers. So the adoption rate has surprisingly been much higher than what we would have normally expected. As we all know that while everybody has been talking about the use of technology in an old field like agriculture, even in the past, the rate of adoption has somewhat tended to lag behind the rhetoric. But I think what has been noticed in the last couple of months is that the rate has certainly increased. And processes like appointment of dealers is now increasingly handled purely digitally. So this definitely at the distribution and retailer level, there has been a lot of digitization, digital influence that has come about. Now, if you move to the farmer level, I mean, how are things at the farmer level? Here again, I think we have been surprised by the kind of speed with which adoption has actually happened in the last few months. Even farmers are participating in meetings like what we are doing just now in terms of Hangout meetings or Zoom meetings. So virtual farmer meetings are happening. And of course, WhatsApp is turning out to be an important, medium for interaction, one-to-one video calls. Our R&D teams are able to actually conduct the training programs for the farmers on these kind of platforms. Now, this I want to just go back to the comment that Arindom made about resilience becoming very important in the post-COVID world. I think that's certainly true, but equally, I think digital technologies provide us the opportunity to scale. I think it's a very important point because it's very difficult for every team member to be available everywhere. But I think we could certainly envisage possibilities of more e-learning modules, which can potentially be even delivered in a non-linear fashion for the farmers, thereby multiplying scale. We've also found that some of the what you might now call as digital 1.0, if you're talking about WhatsApp and social media as 2.0, things like SMS and voice blast are increasingly figuring in our scheme of things with respect to marketing campaigns, just as much as digital 2.0, whether it is Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, these things are certainly increasing. We have also seen that telemarketing has had to be adopted during this period, more as a compulsion because people have not been able to move around. But going forward, talking about the unit economics, which was talked about earlier, perhaps this can provide a good way to sort of complement rather than displace classical marketing, but certainly telemarketing is emerging as an important area. The last point which I want to say is that this has been a hugely surprising development. E-commerce has been adopted far faster than we thought in the last few months. E-commerce has always been considered as urban-centric and much more targeted at maybe Delhi, Mumbai, metro cities and so on and so forth. But I think what is happening is that e-commerce has finally come home to the rural India. I think that's a very important development that we are witnessing as well. Well, even if you move within the organization with respect to employee engagement, for example, we were talking about this at some point in time prior to the start of the webinar about how work from home has actually happened. I think we've been operating all our offices in all our cities, except the factories and our research centers, completely work from home for almost 2.5 months now. Now, we've been pleasantly surprised at our own ability actually to be able to do that. And I think most of the industry has also been doing that. In fact, I heard one of the oil drilling companies say that they never figured that work from home can actually work for oil drilling. But the fact that it's working for oil drilling seems to give us the promise that it can work for many industries. Of course, what it means is that the IT infrastructure has held up and aspects like cybersecurity have become front and center in lots of dialogues, and these are important things which we are presently doing. There are a lot of course, cyber hackers who are trying to make inroads into our systems. We do get mails which periodically say that log into some particular site and maybe you'll get $1 million. But I think these are all things that everybody is learning to live with and how to sort of work under. What we have also noticed is that the period that is freed up because of travel being reduced has actually given a lot more bandwidth for our HR team and other learning and development team members to engage in capacity building sessions for many of our team members. So I think there is actually a recasting of the time that everybody has been spending. I think there's a lot of increase in terms of capacity building. We already talked about the R&D training sessions, which were in the context of farmers, but even for the internal teams that have happened. Even classical processes like interviewing are purely going online. Of course, this is happening in other industries, but even from ag input point of view, online interviews for new appointments is becoming the norm, where people are unable to travel across various cities. So definitely, I think there has been a huge impact on the internal processes as well with respect to employees. Now, coming to the supply chain level, I think this is really the possible game changer going ahead. There have been early changes that we have witnessed, even in terms of our own import of raw materials. For example, online processes are getting introduced by various banks, whether it is for letter of credit or whether it is even by the government, for example, for claiming of benefits. There is a lot of activity that is getting online, even with respect to custom clearance. Our internal processes like investment in mutual funds, for example, or even redeeming of funds, those are all completely moved online. In the good old days, it was very difficult to imagine without 3 signatures or 2 signatures things to really happen, and then the paper used to get passed around. But nowadays, it's so easy that many of these activities have migrated totally online. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, these things bring with it a lot of risk with regard to cyber fraud and so on and so forth, but that's a different topic. The fact of the matter is that there is a migration, a clear migration. Even the audit processes for year-end audits, for example, have been conducted through the video platform. Interestingly, the monitoring of our hybrid seed production plots using remote sensing, tools, satellite imagery, these things are increasing. And I think it was alluded to by Arindom when he talked about surveillance of the plots and understanding how the crop condition is. Now, these are things which are definitely showing early positive trends, and we do believe that these things can actually multiply in the days ahead. If you move to our R&D operations in the seed business, as many of you may be aware, we do have a concept called crop tour, where multiple team members actually visit a particular place somewhere in the remote parts of the country, and they actually evaluate the candidates that we are proposing to advance through our new product development process. And many of these things have actually moved online, and surprisingly without any loss of effectiveness. What it really means is that this allows for scale to come in, where multiple decision makers can actually come in through the digital platform. Earlier, I mean, everybody had to travel. If you have to go to a particular place in Berhampur, for example, it's a big journey. There are about 15 people that have to go. It's a lot of time commitment. Now you can actually conduct this online, maybe just spending 2-3 hours whenever this particular exercise is scheduled. So you not only save the cost of travel, but you are actually able to get a force multiplication, as you can get multiple experts into the conversation. So this is a very important thing, and it kind of also speaks to the earlier point I mentioned about not just scale multiplication, but also effectiveness multiplication, in addition to resilience multiplication, which I think Arindom talked about. But on balance, where do we actually see all of this coming out? I want to say that this is digitization is what we are witnessing is obviously not an unmixed blessing. There are pluses and minuses. Some of the positives, like we already talked about, the channel connect travel hours are significantly reduced. There is a recasting of the time that is being spent. Hopefully, a better proportion of time is being spent in actual business discussions rather than in travel. But I think there are certain activities, things like stock monitoring, while have happened with some video support, may actually benefit, may actually be much more effective with a physical contact. A lot of communication to the channel has been done through the digital means, but I think one of the important things that we have missed out because of our people not moving in the field is actually market intelligence. Arindam actually talked about market intelligence getting enabled through the digitization, but actually our experience is that market intelligence has actually been disabled by the physical non-movement of people, because it's very difficult for us to really know what is the stock levels of different competitors in different markets, or how the crop shift is happening, which we were earlier able to know very, very easily because of our physical presence in the market. So there's a bit of a discordant or a different point that is emerging, but I guess it depends on the sector and depends on the particular context that we are talking about. Somewhere some things could be positively impacting, somewhere something could actually be disabling. This digital farmer meetings, we are able to engage more farmers in lesser time. So there is again a question of effectiveness and efficiency that's increasing from a time perspective. But I guess from a communication effectiveness perspective, let's face it, I mean, while we are all very comfortable and happy doing the Zoom call, I think we'll be happier doing it face to face. It's certainly not as comfortable, as easy, and as free flowing as it could be if it was a face to face interaction. And certainly the farmer interaction is a lot lesser, because we kind of ask a very focused question and there is a focused response. But I think there's a lot more to communication than just replying to specific queries. Employee engagement, as I mentioned to you, has certainly happened considerably. But here again, I think the absence of face-to-face interaction is a missing piece. to some extent, one would be tempted to think that we are making do under the circumstances rather than really, achieving everything in the communication that we would like to achieve through WFH. Digitization of workflow has reduced time and paperwork. I talked about number of examples even in the customs area, but unfortunately, many of the processes are not yet digitized end to end. So you actually get into a situation where 3 steps out of a 5-step process is well digitized, and then you're stuck for the last 2. So perhaps that's an opportunity for some of the startups on this call, as well as startups out there in the world, to see if there is opportunity to really, consider end-to-end digitization. So how do we see this going forward? It is very clear that digitization will be accelerated post-COVID-19 because there are certain advantages that digitization is bringing about. The feeling that one is left with is that going forward, we could expect a hybrid approach, something that combines physical as well as digital, what I think is commonly called as a phygital approach that might assume ascendancy much faster than what we have witnessed so far. So net, we are very hopeful and very encouraged by what we have seen, and we certainly want to kind of build digital into the activities that we are undertaking at a faster pace and at a greater level than what we have hitherto done. So I'm going to stop here, Raj, and thank you, Raj.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you're covered right from R&D, manufacturing, employees, and the channel to the farmer, Mr. Nagarajan. Thank you so much. I have, though you mentioned your last line in the slide is hybrid model. Yeah, you mentioned there's a hybrid model that would come into fore. I've got a couple of things coming out in my mind. One is you mentioned about the e-commerce taking shape, but as per the protocol, when I say protocol, as per the law of the country, a pesticide, for example, or a fertilizer cannot be sold to the e-commerce or online platforms. As an industry, like you're also part of both FSI and Crop Care Federation, and maybe with other associations, are you trying to pitch in where the government allows this to be delivered to the farmer?
Yeah, we were also actually originally under the impression, like what you were saying, that it would be a very difficult thing because of the absence of the licensing. But frankly, I think we have found that there are a number of players in the market who are able to do it even today. So I think it is not that restrictive as far as the government regulation is concerned.
I know AgroStar is one of them which does, but
yeah, absolutely, AgroStar is doing that, and other companies are also doing this. So the specific of what you're saying is not a restriction, but I think the general sentiment what you're expressing with regard to whether ag input companies are encouraging the government to liberalize regulation to be able to facilitate modern ways of doing things, yes, I think the answer is absolutely true, because we certainly want to take advantage of emerging technologies, and we certainly want to take advantages of different routes to market. And yes, that would be something which we would really support.
Or maybe since the entire, ag chem industry or ag input industry, you got extremely good channel support across the country, millions of dealers. So is there a way where you can connect through digitization the channel with a company, where the company gets the order and process through the channel and they deliver to the farmer?
Well, I think necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, and I think different models, different routes to market have already been figured out. If you recall, towards the end of March when the lockdown started, we were actually extremely fearful with regard to our ability to reach our material, whether it is seeds or crop protection chemicals or even crop nutrition products, to the last mile. In fact, we did call out last mile as a significant challenge for us, because we felt that we could actually move material from the factory to the closest depot. But what I think has happened over the last couple of months is that a lot of things have got sorted out, and I guess the forces of demand and supply have played out, and I think the government has been extremely supportive as well, because in a number of places government has also encouraged setting up of local shops and local retail points. So I think frankly speaking, I think looking back now, it has been less of a difficulty than what we feared, but certainly it has not been smooth sailing. I think our teams have worked very hard to be able to enable this, and I think the government has certainly not been a restraining factor is the point to your question actually.
They've been very supportive. In fact, our first webinar, which we had on 25th April, we had actually discussed the challenges of mainly on supply chain management. We know the entire trains have moved with a cotton seed from south to Punjab.
Yes,
to that extent, government has helped.
I think government has actually realized that agriculture is very important. There is a large percentage of our population that is dependent on agriculture. So they have been extremely proactive in terms of supporting us, not just at the central level, but even at the state level. Many state governments. Of course, it has not been an easy and smooth sailing for them because they are also not that much able to predict what is going to happen. So it has been a situation of governments also responding to developments rather than having a playbook which they are just able to implement. But nobody has a playbook, right? I mean, no country in the world has a playbook to deal with COVID kind of a crisis. So I think we are quite pleased with the kind of support we have got with the government.
Thanks, Mr. Nagarajan. I think it was nice way to put it across all the angles. Let me come to Nitin. Hi, Nitin.
Hi, Raj.
Yeah. Nitin, Samunati, I mean, it has changed the lives of farmers in various ways, both at an individual level as through the FPOs. And I know you have got something very interesting term called AMLA. I know you work in that domain. Anil has spoken about it in one of our conferences. Now, coming to you as a thing, in your point of view, how digitization enables various channels of product offerings to small and marginal farmers and FPOs through your various financing tools? How disruptive it is, and what are the risks involved as a finance guy for you? And how do you overcome them?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
I would love to answer that, Raj. But before even that, I remember speaking to Arindom 1.5 years back in his office, where he was saying that India has gone through many revolutions in agriculture, where, in the past, we've seen productivity and yield levels going to earlier unattainable levels. But he said, I don't know if he remembers, saying that the next decade will be the agri-tech revolution in agriculture. And we are only 1.5 years into it. And what COVID-19 has done is it's crushed that decade that he was referring to 2.5 years. Because what we at Samunati are seeing is that next 1.5 years is where this ag-tech revolution will play out. We often get asked, why a financial services company like Samunati is even interested in the ag-tech space. What are you doing there? Are you a fintech? Are you a ag-tech? So I have a few slides, 2 or 3, which I made for very different audience, but very relevant for today's discussion. And I'll just put it and try to skim it through and also answer what you just asked me.
Sure.
So this is what Samunati is. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Raj. So we're a very mission-focused company. We call ourselves as a social enterprise because we were set up with a mission of making markets work for smallholder farmers and taking agri value chains to higher equilibrium. Now these are two missions in one. And both of them play a causal relationship with each other, because if you start making markets work for farmers, they automatically move to higher equilibrium. And if you start taking value chains to higher equilibrium, you automatically start making sense for farmers. You start making markets work for them. 1 year into our operations, we really started thinking about, is finance the only solution to all problems in agriculture? Because if we are looking at taking agri value chains to higher equilibrium, we need to understand what are the challenges in agri value chains that are hindering them to operate at a higher equilibrium. Can financial services solve them? Maybe yes, to some extent. Can they be completely addressed by financial services? No. And if financial services can't solve them, then what is required to take value chains to the higher equilibrium? And as Arindom rightly mentioned, and I don't know how our thoughts match so much, The biggest problem in India today in agriculture are fragmented land holdings and information asymmetry. And to an extent, and aggregation through farmer producer organization, cooperative societies have addressed fragmented land holdings. Still a lot of work to be done on information asymmetry, especially when it comes to market linkages, so that farmers and farmer producer organizations can place the stock that they have, the produce that they have at the optimum or best prices. Also, a lot of advisory services that they require need to be delivered at the doorstep. So while these are the pain points of farmers, there are pain points for farmer producer organizations and agri businesses at the last mile. And if you start looking at them, today we don't have farmer profiles which are digital in nature, and a lot of agtechs have come in and started doing that, but it's a long process. Right, so digital profiles of farmers is a hindrance in coming out with customized financial solutions for farmers, right? And a lot of these digital profiles, the digital profiles also need to capture what the farm holdings are, what the geolocations of the farmers are, what is the transaction data between the farmer and a buyer, so that you can really get insights into what are the cash flow cycles that a farmer goes through, so that you can come with a relevant offering. On the supply side of the value chain, today the value chains are so informal, they operate in the cash economy. The transaction data doesn't exist, and therefore again, if you are looking at taking products and services to farmers, in absence of a digital environment, in absence of digital payments, in absence of digital highways, how do you even approach farmers across the country and build something that is sustainable, scalable in the long run? A lot of IT companies, a lot of agtech companies are today focusing on IoT, which are very important. Internet of Things is very important for organizations, intermediaries who connect farmers to the larger market, that they manage processes efficiently, reduce the bring in efficiencies in the entire processes. Companies like Stellabs are doing a lot of IoT developments in the dairy space, then largely the agri businesses, farmer producer companies that are the intermediaries between the farmers and the external markets. Even they need management. They need agtech solutions to manage their inventory, to manage the receivables, to manage their day-to-day activities, right? So now all these solutions are required to take value chains at a higher equilibrium, and nowhere finance comes into the picture, right? So all these solutions to take agri value chains to higher equilibrium, finance is a big enabler. It's one of the most important pieces in the puzzle, but it's not the entire puzzle. And that's where the agtech plays a role. When we started looking at how do we bring in digitization into the agriculture sector, one of our early realizations was that no matter what you do, if you're approaching the farmer directly, the adoption rates will always be low. Adoption rates will be low because there are issues around farmers being able to trust the applications or services that you're trying to bring to them. Issues are around adoption of technology because of lack of training, change of behavior that is required to move to digitalized processes. And therefore very important that the entry point of these technology is through an entity in between which has that last mile connectivity. It's important that we are taking technology to the farmers through entities who they trust, entities who will be equally aligned in their incentives to make sure that the farmers benefit out of these technologies, entities which will also invest effort and money in training the farmers. Right, so it was very important that we approach the farmers, take the agtech solutions to them through somebody they can rely on, and that entity also assumes the responsibility of making sure that those agtech solutions succeed. And that's why Samunati chose the B2B2C route to take our products and solutions to farmers through farmer cooperatives, through farmer producer organizations, through contract farming initiatives, and also through local agri entrepreneurs, because they are equally invested in the welfare of the farmers. That's the approach we've taken. Thankfully, a lot of agtech companies have come up in the last 5 years, and most of them have been trying to get traction on the ground. but they've suddenly become more relevant in today's era. In last 60 days, these agtech companies have seen traction that they were not able to achieve in last 4 years, despite all the efforts they had. And as Arindom rightly said, supply chains were operating well. They were at a lower equilibrium. Nobody had a problem with that, because there is always an inertia of changing the way you work. But suddenly, with supply chains breaking down because of this externality that we are going through, everybody is now looking at a different way of working. Everybody is looking at aligning to the new normal. And this is where the new age agtech companies have suddenly become more relevant for the farmers. And at Samunati, we see some of these pieces on the screen. The minimum digitalization that is required in the next 4 to 5 months, and at massive scale, to make sure that agri value chains operate at higher equilibrium. And there we are talking about information exchanges, where farmers, farmer producer organizations, agri enterprises can reach out to larger set of lenders, rating agencies. That is required. Market linkage platforms where buyers and sellers can connect. Where buyers can put in their demand, suppliers can put in their supply, and a lot of initiatives have come up in this space, and they are seeing scale, and as they become more relevant. Payment solutions, the last mile connectivity, the last mile payment, digital payment solutions are, despite Jandhan accounts being there, we still see a larger set of economy operating on cash today, and that piece of the puzzle needs to be digitalized. Farm and farmer data technologies and digital connectivity. At the end of the day, farmers are very good in farming. Nobody actually needs to teach them how to grow a crop, but if the same farmers are managing farmer producer organizations, they do need assistance. They do need somebody who can bring in shared services in the form of helping them with auditing, accounting, filing their returns, filing their board minutes with the MCA. There's a lot of compliance that these farmers need to do, and they're not well equipped. So these technologies in the next 6 months, 7 months will see a lot of traction, and they are required to as I said, to take agri value chains to higher equilibrium. This is what I had. We've recently entered into the agtech space, not as a player, but as an ecosystem player. We are actually working with various other agtech providers and taking those agtech solutions to farmer producer organizations. So the idea is not to compete and come out with our own solutions, but the idea is to give an interface, give a captive customer base to various agtech companies, so that using the Samunati channel, they can reach out to the farmer producer organizations. And if we have a minute, I can actually play a small video which talks about what solutions we've been working on, and then happy to take your questions.
Yeah. Okay, you go ahead with the video. It's not very long.
It's a minute and a half, I guess.
Oh, lovely. You can go ahead.
Thanks, Raj. That's it from my end.
Yeah, I think, in fact, I had a couple of questions which I wanted to put in. I think your video has answered those questions. One was, one was from, you've been working on an input, but I was looking from the output point of view also. I think that answered. Especially, I was talking to some of these modern retail guys the last few days, and they said that we were looking to connect with a lot of FPOs where we can get the produce from. I think, I'm sure some of you would play a very critical role in that, connecting the FPOs with the modern retail or maybe large wholesalers and stuff like that. And the government's initiative has come in handy, especially for, I'm sure, for some of these, especially like Prime Minister's vision of FPOs, which came a couple of years ago, 1,000 FPOs and all, and they connect with the ENAM and other online platforms. That would be a great leverage for you. Thanks, Nitin, for taking us through your entire gambit of game what Samruddhi is playing. Coming to Arjun. Hey, Arjun. Unmute. Yes. Arjun, I mean, as Arindom rightly put it in the beginning, Texas, Silicon Valley, and now the dusty land of India, going to the, from air-conditioned huge towers from Silicon to the fields in India. How do you feel? That's my first question. What made you to come here?
Sure. So it's definitely been a very interesting ride, right? And that is just half the story. My co-founder is actually an American who's originally Filipino and is right outside in the office as well. So obviously the goal here was to be able to increase access to financial services for the next billion, right? So you spoke about those fancy offices in Silicon Valley or New York, right? And we were basing off every theme on the next billion, right? With respect to India. But whenever we came back to India and we went to rural parts of the country, we very clearly realized that there was a significant difference and disparity between aspiration versus reality, yeah, which is what causes a significant disconnect. Luckily for us, it has not created a negative. And if this next billion story has to play out in this country, right, for the benefit of all stakeholders, the rural Indian needs to be equipped with financial services to make his or her operations significantly more productive to start the consumer journey, right, which we've seen in urban India starting to play out already. So while the 300 million people in urban India have started to kind of see that journey evolve around, you can see that with the various Bajaj Finance, kind of marketing campaigns that run around that 0% EMI, financial inclusion in the slums, etc., of large cities. But that innovation, unfortunately, is taking some more time to reach the billion, and that is what kind of made us quit our jobs and move to a small village near Nasik for about 6 to 9 months, which is where we lived and operated out of, and kind of learned firsthand what the difficulty was on ground to be able to then build a customized solution for these particular customer segments.
Okay, now I'll come to the question now. You made it what the passion brought you here. Sure. Now, see, you have started something different than what rest of the startups or guys are doing in the country. You came into something credit lending for agri machinery. Why did you choose this type of lending? A, and how digitization is helping you to reach to meet your mission?
Sure, Raj. So the goal here is to be able to increase access to financial services for these rural customers, right? Now, when we talk about a big, audacious goal like that, it needs to start at some point or the other, right? And now if we talk about the entire suite of financial services, that is everything from payments to savings to insurance to credit and the lot, right? So where does this journey begin, right? Where does that hook start off from, right? And that is where Bajaj Finance, in a way, or the digital lenders of the country decided that for urban India, that hook fundamentally is credit, right? Some payment companies in urban India decided to use payments as the hook to be able to digitally and financially onboard the customer, right? So that is where we chose the path of using credit as a hook to be able to digitally and financially onboard the rural customer, and then help them build a digital footprint slash a transactionary footprint on our platform, thereby enabling them access to another financial services in the future as well, like insurance, savings, payments, and etc. So that is where we kind of understood that, okay, if we want to use credit as a whole, right, this cannot be consumption-based credit, because in rural India, fundamentally, we don't believe that they've reached that consumption curve to be able to digest all of that. And hence, it needs to be related to some sort of income generational aspect to it. Yeah. Now, given that 7 out of 10 people in rural India focus on agriculture, poultry, or dairy and allied industries as their primary source of livelihood, it just makes that the common gateway to participate in as an income generation industry. Right? Now, another important part that comes in when you talk about credit is that how do you analyze the customer, right? And we at Jai Kisan believe that today it is more about mitigating the risk on the customer rather than analyzing the risk on this particular customer, right? And why is that? Because that goes back to my first point, that we are digitally and financially including them for the first time ever. So there's no data on these people to be able to sit and analyze them, yeah? And that is where we need to mitigate that risk. Now, when we say we want to mitigate that risk, we need to mitigate it with some or the other sort of secure nature in the financial product. So number one, it being income generational significantly helps on mitigating risk, because now you have an idea about where this cash flow is fundamentally going to come from. But how do you, we are not a lender, right? We need to get the Samunatis and the IDFCs and the Kodaks, etc. of the world interested in lending towards this space, right? And obviously the Samunatis of the world are driven by this mission. Unfortunately, not other lenders are like them, right? And so we need to introduce that concept that lending in this space is safe enough, right? And how do you do that? And that is where we've come up with being able to mitigate the risk by creating specific structures, right? One of them is equipment financing. So the reason we started off initially with equipment financing, and now we do a whole suite of credit products like input financing, invoice financing, etc. as well, is because in equipment financing, it is very clear that the farmer is going to decrease their costs, is going to increase their yield, and hence their net income, net cash flow is fundamentally going to increase, with which they can service some amount of debt. Additionally, it is also an asset, which is what makes a lender, right, a traditional lender who Jai Kisan is warming up to this space to lend in this space towards, more comfortable to fundamentally go out and lend, because there's some sort of an asset to be collateralized, right? And using that, we kind of dived into other products as well, where today now we are doing input financing for farmers who work with larger off-taker entities. These can be more new school and old school. So the FPOs of the world, the contract farming companies of the world, or even the Arthiyas of the world in a way, right? Versus all the farm-to-fork models as well, and the organic models and the dairies, etc. of the world, where we are financing the raw material need fundamentally for this particular borrower, ensuring that they have a market to sell towards. And lastly, we have come up with a product which is invoice financing, where we fundamentally enable the farmer to get the payment on delivery of that particular product to the collection center, right? So previously, the problem was that a farmer would have to wait for 15 to 20 days to receive that particular payment from the buyer and whoever that may be, right? So that is where we come in and we help provide that payment to the farmer upfront, and then we settle that with the particular off-taker at the later date, whenever they are comfortable, right? Because one of the most important aspects, Raj, when you're a small player like us, right, trying to disrupt the market, is that you need to provide a value proposition to every stakeholder in the market, not just the farmer, so that we are able to increase access at a scalable level for that particular farmer to create the right impact for the same as well. Right. So that is why we initially kicked off with equipment financing, to be able to mitigate the risk by being able to create a financial structure accordance with what lenders were okay with. And now we jumped into other things as well. And now after this latest round of funding, we are looking at jumping into other financial products on the credit side, but also with respect to insurance, savings, and all of those. And we are constantly looking out for tie-ups with players who are originating these particular products.
Arjun, I have two things to know from you. See, how do you, reach and penetration? Currently, in how many states you are operating?
Sure. So we are in 10 states and one union territory.
Great. So when you are in 10 states and union territory, 11 all put together, how do you compare with the mainstream financing agencies like traditional banks?
Sure, sure. So that is where the role of technology comes into play, right? And as Nitin on the call also very clearly mentioned, right, with rural India, the most effective strategy is the B2B2C strategy, right? And why we also believe so is fundamentally because there is that dealer, there is that buyer who's been dealing with this farmer for generations. And that is a significant amount of insight that has been generated over these generations, right? So why should we further innovate to let that long-standing value of that particular insight kind of dissipate? We want to be able to leverage those particular long-standing value chain networks to be able to access them, right? And that is where we are able to give technology solutions to either the seller, it may be equipment or input to the particular farmer, or the buyer. It again can be an agro processing company, it can be an FPO, it can be a dairy, it can be a poultry, or whatever the case may be. Technology solutions to be able to transact and deal with their customers or their farmers on a more efficient basis. At which point we plug in financing for those particular transactions. Right? And that is how we, with a team of 100 people, are able to cater to over 5,500 farmers, right? Only in a span of 6 months across 10 states. Yeah. But what is more importantly to know is that our partners are dealing today with 110,000 farmers on a weekly basis in transactions, right? And those are the people who are getting included into our technology platform, hence getting digitally included, not financially included yet, right? So 5,500, 6,000 are financially included, whereas these are digitally included where we will convert them to become financially included as well after we build a digital profile on them.
Now, see, one said your time, the connects for you are from the financial institutions, like you mentioned, like some of the or technology providers, or you develop your own technology. Are you also already tied up, or would like to expand your tie-up with the the machinery providers like Tafe, Mahindra, or all those machinery providers, both at the local level and the national level? Because I see this, like we have something called Campo in Kerala, and then we have a lot of, like, I know someone in Hyderabad who got entered into the manufacturing of this farm machinery. So are you tying up with these guys also, so that
Absolutely,
they get a slice from what you are doing?
Correct. Because how we operate is much like a Bajaj Finance model, where Bajaj Finance goes and partners with the Xiaomis, Oppos, Vivos, etc. of the world, right? And as you may understand, Raj, tractor is a different ballgame altogether, right? Where 80% is a consolidated industry with 20% being fragmented, right? We don't look at that space. We are looking at a largely tractor-driven implements, polyhouses, shade nets, drip irrigation, motor pumps, dairy, poultry, etc. But that space itself is an $18 billion space, right? With respect to processing, that also included. But that space is 80% fragmented, 20% consolidated, right? So rather than going to the base level of OEM, we go to the distributor/dealer networks, right? And we partner with them. In some cases, so today we are partnered with about 750, right, such dealer partnerships across the states that we particularly operate in, right? And over 15 OEMs also who we have direct partnerships with, right? And we provide point of sale financing at their dealer locations. So for example, in the case of an equipment or in the case of even invoice, we provide point of sale financing literally as easy as going in and buying a Xiaomi phone, which is being financed by Bajaj, right? Or going in and buying a car, which is being financed by a bank, right? Where the financial services provider funds the vendor and the vendor provides the particular asset to the customer.
Awesome. I think we have covered all the points and all the things that is required in the agri value chain for the entire agri thing. let me see if there are any hands going up. Attendees and audience, if you have some questions, please raise your hand so that we will allow you to speak, and you can speak to the panelists and put a question to a specific person if you have in mind. Yeah, we have Venkat Ramana who's raised his hand. Let us see. Mr. Venkat Ramana, you can speak and put your question. Mr. Venkat Ramana, are you there? Please unmute and speak. Okay. We have Vinod Kumar. Have Vinod, can you speak? Can you put the question?
Yes, sir.
And introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Am I audible to you, sir?
Yes,
am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. To introduce myself, Vinod Kumar. I'm Vinod Kumar. Recently, I joined Rallis India Limited as a product manager during this COVID only. So I could see this.
Hope your question is not to Mr. Nagarajan.
No. Yes, I'm very happy to see my CEO here.
Yeah.
And Raj sir, to all the panelists. So I was closely listening to the entire discussion since the beginning. So there was one point. There are two aspects I would like to speak, because in my previous organization also I was working as a product manager. I closely work in this business. So one point has come regarding this farmer perception about the adapting the internet services. So will it be costly or something like that? But there I have few aspects. So when a farmer want to get into the agri internet services, and through that again to get the advisory or to get into the farmer meetings like Zoom meetings or such kind of meetings, so there are few aspects he will consider. I feel those are I've listed down. Probably it may be useful for everyone. So first point is
you have any specific question?
Not exactly questions, sir. I just want to add few points here. So I feel those are useful. That is one point, is that the advisory services, so far the farmer is getting through the normal store wherever he's going to. So he will evaluate that one. The second point is that the target group, whether the right target group, they are looking after this thing as a new source of the information. And the third point is the credit facility. So sometimes, okay, even though I'll get some information from these new platforms, but what about my credit facility, where actually which I'm already getting from the earlier store, the store loyalty and credit facility. Another point is that connecting the dots, like especially the point is that reaching the last mile. The point we did very thoroughly. So whether the product is already there in that particular locality where the farmer is already purchasing.
Noted.
And one more point I would like to add, sir. That is you question to the Mr. Nagarajan, sir. That the e-commerce thing in agribusiness. Already there are, of course, you have already summarized that point. I just want to add to it. There is a platform called India Mart. So they are actively doing it, and because previous experience and all, after this COVID situation, so they could also see the raise in the sales. And your question, to answer your particular question, that whether the store should have the proper licensing to sell the products or not. What the India Mart is doing is, they will act as a facilitator. So for example, if any farmer want to purchase some quantity of the agrochemical, so he will take that customer to the right shop keeper. So in the near location to the farmer. So there the shopkeeper will tell the price, and it just act as a mediator, so that he will connect the farmers. So that's how the things are moving on. So
thank you, sir.
Mr. Raj, can I ask?
Please.
Yeah, myself Venkat. I'm working for Plantics and Speed German company. We're into the agri technology. So I'm heading south.
Hi Venkat, how are you?
Yeah, fine, Raj. So I keep following Ray Consulting seminars all the days. Yeah. So I have around.
And you see this last year you got it.
Yeah, right. All the time, mostly. Yeah. So the same posture. Okay, good. Yeah. My simple question is to Mr. Nitin Chaudhary. Right, Nitin. The thing is like, as of last year, the Plantix was only taking care of the farmers into the digital advisory services to the farmers. We have around 10 lakh users all over India. Okay, more than around 1.5 lakh active users, they're using Plantix for diagnosing their diseases. Okay, so the accuracy is around 98% of accuracy. They get the disease diagnosis. Okay, so second thing, last year we have introduced one model to serve the farmers better. So we wanted to close the circle. As of now, we are giving advisory. Now we are into like, we wanted to close the complete circle where we can give advisory, along with we suggest farmer to go to the particular dealer also, by letting the farmer what is the inventory the dealer is having and what is the right medicine to the farmer to be used, right? Now, for further step, we are entering into the digital distribution model. We are having tie with different Indian and multinational companies of seeds and agrochemicals, including micronutrients and all. So now
Can you be a little crisp on the question, Venkat?
Sure. Yeah, I came to the final point. So we have tied up with different organizations to provide credit to the dealers. Okay, so like they are purchasing products from us, dealers, and now we are exploring different models into the farmer credit. So I observed one point from you that you are giving farmer credit to only FPOs, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Is there any opportunity that you are going to offer the credit to the non-FPO farmers also?
No, absolutely, yes. See, FPO is one channel to reach out to farmers. Any intermediary or any enterprise, any business, or even local entrepreneurs who work with a large collectives of farmers,
Okay.
it's an opportunity for us to offer financial services through them.
Okay.
What really matters, Venkat, is, as Arjun also said, these local intermediaries, farmer producer organizations, the information that they capture, the soft information that they capture by working with the farmers is very critical in our decision where we are parting with our money and giving credit. Right, so because no other data is available, right? You don't have financial statements to underwrite. It's the soft capital that is available, which allows us to underwrite these loans. So any which has been working.
So if any third party service is there to give the security on behalf of the farmer, you are ready to give the loans to them, right?
Absolutely, yes, and happy to discuss it offline with you in the interest of time. But we can touch base and see how we can work.
Then I will. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roz. Thank you.
Thanks
for your time.
Yeah, we'll take maybe two questions. One is raised by Ankur Raj. Ankur, can you speak? Hi, Ankur. Can you unmute yourself and speak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I am Ankur Raj. I'm from Rabobank. My question is to Mr. Nitin or Mr. Arjun. Anyone of you can. So one big issue is while reaching to farmers is the language. So because language, if you are giving any app or any data or something, so how are you coping up with such an issue, especially when you are collecting data and also and again transferring to English and all. So what are the challenges you face and how are you coping up with that?
Sure. So Ankur, very quickly, most of the solutions that we are taking to the farmers, not necessarily designed by Samunnati, but various agtech companies that we are working with. A couple of things that we make sure that the interface is in a language in which the language which farmers understand, and therefore many of the solutions coming out today are multilingual solutions, at least at the front end. And the way the data is captured is in an objective manner, right? So that nobody has to key in data. Am I audible?
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So the way the data is captured is in the objective format, right? So that nobody has to key in data, so that the front end user's ability to type in on a keyboard is not a requirement. So there are smart ways to capture data. We do lose out something. You'll never be able to capture 100% of what you want to capture. But as long as you are able to capture 80%, and that 80% is good enough to give you an indication on how to use the data and go back to the farmer communities with relevant solutions, that is good enough. So that's the approach, but very relevant.
Yeah, to quickly just add on to that, Nitin, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? And this is where the B2B2C kind of approach also comes very handy, right? While we ensure that all these are kind of multilingual, 10 to 12 languages minimum if they're user facing, which is something which is like default literally with most kind of apps that are customer facing, right? But in most cases, with respect to applications in agri-tech, or at least with us here at Jai Kisan, we expect some middleman to be able to help collect that data from the farmer, right? Because the farmer, irrespective of whatever language that it will be, will need help to be able to access that particular data from whatever repository he's going to or she's going to access it from. So that is why the B2B2C model makes these kind of processes also more efficient, in addition to the user interface that one is able to customize for language to language.
Thank you. I will take a last question. I know it's already 90 minutes into the game. Ashok Veliappa, can you unmute and speak? Ashok Veliappa, are you there?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One is on, this national agricultural market was started in 2016. And from what I'm given to understand is even till today, it's not very successful. The main reason is, the farmer prefers to have cash on hand. That's a cash in hand security. So do you see this as a challenge going forward, or do you see this, of course, this is an opportunity going forward, but how do you want to tap that opportunity? That's the first question. The second question is, in case of agricultural technology, like for example, drone spraying, etc. In case of cash crops, the farmers can afford it. But in case of smaller farmers, they have to get together to make technology affordable. So how do you see this happening? The last question is, farmers believe in somebody whom they can trust. So how do you actually, get the farmer or the dealer or whoever you're contacting to trust you? And is there a lot of paperwork involved, in terms of agreements? Is the guy find it very difficult to understand? Or how do you simplify the whole process? So these are my questions. Anybody can answer. It's not addressed.
Yeah. Anybody you have in mind to answer, or anybody?
No, anybody can answer it.
Yes.
I'll just answer the first one. You're very right. There are exchanges and they've not seen traction as much as they could have. There are two primary reasons for that. I'll say three. One, if you're talking about smallholder farmers, there are not enough quantities and therefore aggregation is required. Even if you aggregate for a farmers at a FPO level, farmers may yield various qualities of output, and therefore sorting, grading, and the ability to sell the entire produce. They would want to deal with a diversified buyer base, rather than a buyer who wants only a specific quality. But most importantly, as you said, buyer wants to pay, buyer wants the money immediately, and therefore we don't just need exchanges. We need platforms that also bring to facilitate that transactions. In absence of those, these transactions break down. There are a lot of transactions happening on these portals. They are becoming more relevant with time. But at the same time, a lot of linkage opportunities fail because of lack of lubrication of the trade. And there is a role. As I started my talk saying, finance is important. It's an important piece of puzzle, but not the entire solution. But that's where finance comes into picture.
Oh,
sure. And just to add on to that very quickly, right, Ashok, let's just take for example, where you said that a smallholder farmer, it is hard for him today or her to access technology, right, and they need to get into a group to be able to do so, right? So let's just think about 10 years ago, there was a thing called a tiller, right? For operating a tiller, you needed a tractor, okay? In 10 years, you don't need a tractor to operate that tiller because it's become a power tiller, right? So that's how technology is also becoming progressive to be able to make it more at an individual basis for the smallholder farmer. But having said that, in a place like India where disruption still has been limited with respect to at least the smallholder farmer, and you're very right in saying that the guys, the farmers who are kind of cropping cash crops, etc., for them it's significantly easier. But for the smallholder farmers, it is much more important to kind of operate in farmer networks, right? And that is where the role of an FPO, which is what kind of Samanati very, very deeply works with and has created significant amount of expertise in, kind of comes really handy as well. And in addition to that, the role of the agripreneur, right, which the government has very much been kind of influencing across rural India, which is one individual who's passionate, who's of an entrepreneurial nature, coming together and creating a network of farmers so that their buying power increases, right, and their selling power increases as well, so that they have the access to the right technologies as a group which is largely efficient enough. So we believe that these are the couple of ways that you can ensure that technology reaches to the fragmented base as well, while informally consolidating them in some format or the other.
Do you see corporates helping making that happen?
Let me just add to that and answer your question.
Okay.
Parts of your question, you asked many questions, very good questions. So one is on, you talked of drones. So one example which was given by Nitin and Arjun is the FPO. Second is there is another technology solution to that. You can just look up FarmMart. You can go to their website and you can see as to how they are enabling smallholder farmers to access technology, which at the unit level, at an individual level, it's difficult to do. So that's one. And second, you talked about trust, which is extremely important point, but I think that was adequately addressed by Nitin and Arjun when they say that they always use the social capital which is already available at the ground level. You're talking of established relationships, and that's what they ride on to be able to get a good insight into the farmers. Huh? So trust is extremely important. And right now, all of us are talking about not a technology solution in isolation, but it's also a high touch and high tech solution. Because India is so fragmented and technology is so nascent, you need to have people on the ground. You cannot just say, I have a technology, it will work at a place where we do not have people on the ground. So, and these people on the ground are not the people from the cities you get in, but they are the existing players in the local market. So it's high touch, high tech, and that's the way we are progressing. Let's see what the future holds.
One question I have, basically I'm ex-rally. I'm ex-rallies myself. So we had introduced something called rice tillers, rice planting, transplanters. So basically we had tied up with Kubota, and we had gone to, small packages like Odisha and West Bengal and tried to get the farmer to actually use these tillers. And it was a hell of a job to get, because you need a minimum sort of area, and to get these farmers together. The land records are all in a mess. So it was quite a challenge. So that's why what you guys are doing is very, very challenging, but it's also, I think, probably one very satisfying.
See, you're making the point yourself that to do it physically, it's cumbersome, it's expensive, it's risky. So unless you have technology solutions which gives you key insight, now how many farmers in the area can use the tiller, the rice tiller, and what kind of payment solutions are there? So all that, I mean, you are just, furthering the cause that is being made by the panelists, that technology would be able to cut through the information asymmetry and do it in a very efficient and effective manner. Because, I mean, individually, physically, to go there and try to do it, it's highly complex, you lose control, and it's too expensive.
Anybody doing it in plantations? Because that's much easier market. The last question, don't worry, Raj. Anybody trying
good to hear your voice after decades. I should believe that. Yeah.
In plantations
like
for what?
Tea or coffee or something. This technology basically.
Oh, it's been used globally. Even in India, they have started using all kind of technology. But I need to understand your purpose. Technology for what? To improve.
No, various technologies which are being adopted world over are not being adopted in India. Because I'm from Cook, so I know the amount of technology that these guys are adapting for the estates.
No, again,
That is why I asked you.
are you talking at the production level? Are you talking at the quality transparency level? At which part of the supply chain are you talking of?
No, whichever aspect, actually suits plantation. Maybe it's in terms of, selling their produce or I don't know.
I think what Mr. Arindom was saying, what is the specific thing you're looking for?
Yeah, I understand what he's saying, but basically technology to, help them increase their produce, increase the quality of their produce. That's something which I find is lacking in especially coffee estates.
So you're talking about advisory on, the agriculture practices. You're talking about using the right kind of inputs and all of that? Okay.
Not exactly. That is very basic. So I'm talking of something else.
What I suggest, Believer, probably if you can share your
I'll take it offline.
I'll share it with the panelists, and then they'll have good time to answer.
Yeah. Thanks.
And share the answer. Yeah. Thank you. I think any wrap up things if you have left from the panelists.
Yeah, just one point.
Yes.
Now, I mean, we are talking a lot about why technology should be embraced and adopted, but two risks I would like to lay out. One is we need to be cognizant of privacy and security issues. We need to be very, very careful because one big event can take us back by a year and a half or 2 years. That's one. And second, to ensure that technology is democratized, we don't have a technology divide again among the farmer community. So technology comes with caveat. It's not the solution to all problems. It's an enabler and we need to use it wisely.
Yeah. Nitin, you have something?
I totally agree. I think the onus of making sure that privacy and the way we use data is on us, and a lot of onus on the tech companies in making sure that we don't lose momentum in these kind of issues. So totally agree with Arindom. Yeah.
Arjun?
So just a bit more on a positive note, since obviously we've had a very negative past 3 months, right? Given that everyone's been stuck at home with respect to COVID, etc. Guys, this is quite the year for Indian agriculture in a way, right? And it is being deemed as the Paytm/demonetization movement for the food value chain and supply chain overall. As we see a significant democratization across the value chain, right? Rapid implementation of solutions by companies like us on this panel or by the government as well, and a significant increase in willingness by the government to be able to work with different players in the ecosystem to be able to actually create a significant impact for the producer, namely the farmer, right? And that kind of aligns itself with food security in our country, which is a very, very important topic. So I think it should be a very, very interesting year with lots to come and lots of innovations. So looking forward to it very much with all of you alongside us as well.
Before I go to Mr. Nagarajan, I think the Prime Minister's 21 lakh crore package, which came as Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think through the digitization and agriculture, we are there making Bharat Atmanirbhar. That's nice. Mr. Nagarajan, your concluding remarks, please.
I think what the COVID has indicated is clearly that there is a role for an increased role for tech in agriculture, and I think that's a very, very important important understanding, realization, you can say, which means that going forward there will certainly be more openness to experiment, to find that kind of a technology that resolves the problems of the day, and I think that was very timely. So that's the positive thing that is coming out of this tragic crisis.
Great. I was just thinking there was some question coming in. Okay. Anyway. I think this is probably the longest discussion I've had on this series. Each one of you giving thoughts, and I know still there's a lot to share. And I'm sure we'll have more series on digitization in agriculture, maybe through specific fields as we go through. So I will invite you again at a specific things as we go through. Thank you so much, the audience who have always been good to us. Very loyal audience we have. Almost 50% audience which we get every episode are who register again. And like you heard about Ashok, Venkat, they keep coming to us with every episode. And that's the reason being that, we are topic relevant, and thanks to the leaders who come to this to give your vision. And we are very specific, like when someone listens to you, they go out with the solutions, not just what everybody speaks. So that is a differentiation between our product offering and the rest. So thank you, my dear panelists, for taking out weekends to us. And when everybody's working from home, this is another part which is added to our schedule. So, yes, thank you so much, each one of you, Mr. Nagarajan, Arindom, Nitin, and Arjun. At a very short notice, I think in less than 5 days, 6 days, I think, yeah, we could come out, all of you, we could all come together. Now, we see a lot of things coming in from the questions and the chat that, they are requesting for the recordings or the presentations. Friends, all our recordings, hopefully in less than 24 hours, are uploaded on our YouTube channel. You can visit www.youtube.com/reconsulting. Not only this, you have all the previous episodes uploaded there. You please visit, like, subscribe, and forward to many in the world who are looking forward to hear from the experts. So thank you so much. We are also available on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn with the Reconsulting page. We would be having every Saturday one webinar minimum to begin per week. And in case if you have missed on the communication, which we are shooting through our dedicated 9,000 plus emails only to the ACT professionals and almost 5,000 WhatsApp messages all of you are getting. And in case if you miss to get email or a WhatsApp message, please keep visiting our Facebook and LinkedIn pages where you will get our updates on our forthcoming, not only webinars, but other details that would happen from Reconsult. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And please take care, be safe in these difficult times, and educate others to be safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.